This is a project that I gave the kids for Valentine's Day. It's very important to me because I'm a romantic at heart. I try to teach the kids, going back to their little boy and girl days when they were really young, how to cut a perfect heart out of paper. Well, perfect leads a lot of translation because a lot of kids did it, and I didn't think their hearts were commercial enough. They didn't look, what we would expect from something commercial that you download or whatever. But you can get it, and I got it pretty easily. I took all the scrap silver that I had, and I made 12 gauge wire with it on my rolling machine. And then I rolled that flat, so it started out as 12 gauge. So this is pretty substantial silver. And each student is going to pay for the silver, but I'm going to put it out for them. So I had to roll. I was up that night for 6 hours rolling silver to a nice thick, about I would say 1.8 millimeters, something like that. And that would be the two sides of the heart. So there's a trick to bending, and the trick in bending is don't disturb the sheet metal too much. Hold it on the end with the pliers, and then bend it around your paper design. And you might have to tape your paper design down to do it really accurately. Now, these two pieces that make both sides of the heart are going to connect to each other. So when you file, you have to file at 90 degrees at the end. Some people are very good at this, and some of the students, well, they're just not good at it. They don't understand the file only cuts on the forward stroke. So you have to cut across the metal at 90 degrees and then take off the little burr that forms. And this is going to be a soldering connection at the apex of the heart, the top, and at the bottom. And then you mechanically try it and try to see how it's going to go together. It will be astonishingly beautiful, and it will match the paper pattern 100%. Every student is going to need a bail, and I know they're going to be under pressure, and they'll never be able to get all this done in one period. They've worked already about a period or maybe two, and they still are not close. So they're going to have to solder their heart together and clean it. That'll be 15-20 minutes. They have 90 minutes in my class, so I made the bail. I put about 9 gauge wire into an electric drill and tapered the end so it comes to a point. And this is a great trick that most jewelers use. So when you need to taper something, just put it in an electric drill, chuck it in the drill, and lay it on your bench pin, and it'll spin, and you can taper it to a point. Now, my idea was to taper both sides and leave the fattest part in the middle, and that would be the shape of the bail that I'm making. Of course, after you do all the hammering and flatten the thing out, it's fattest in the middle, and the 2 points are flat, but are points. And you need to heat this up to a light red color and immediately dunk it in the water. And this annealing process, every jewelry student knows that you do this over and over again with silver. And then you put the round nose pliers in the middle, and on your bench pin you just roll it, and you create a perfect, beautiful curved bend, taking the shape of the thickest part of the wire. And then you might even hold it with your round nose pliers, and then take your fine flat file, broad file, and file it so it's completely flat on the sides. Now this is going to have to be cleaned up, but that's the basic shape, and you see I made 8 of them there. And I would say between the electric drill part and filing and everything, there goes about an hour and a half. Now we're talking to help these kids, I spent 6 hours of my time on Wednesday, and now I'm about to solder each one. I just applied the flux. I'm holding the solder with a tweezer. The solder is in wire form, and I know the heat very well, and I just want to heat those ends and close them with the solder. So each bale is closed, and then I'll need to clean it up on a padded wheel or something like that. So I bring it over to my polishing buffing machine, we call it. It's actually called a buffing lathe. And I'm going to hold it with a needle nose pliers and get the two faces and then put a nice even finish. And this finish is not a shiny mirror-like finish. It's of a connection. And then you're going to solder that close and stretch it to size so it just fits over the stone. Again, this is about 2.5 hours of time to make 8 of them. But I did it in the most efficient way. The bottom I made using a stamping punch. So it's actually a little can. That's what it amounts to when it's all soldered together. And it holds that cabochon stone. And then I will solder that to where the top of the heart comes together inside the heart. And that will make a beautiful present for Valentine's Day for, I hope, their mother or grandmother or their girlfriend or whoever they value so much. Very often, I love handwork because it reflects very special feelings, and it holds its value for years and years, because you're going to remember that when your kid was well, they're about 15 now, some of them 16. At 15 years old or 14 years old, look at what my son made for me for Valentine's Day. My mother was very sentimental, and when I made something by hand, you can believe me, she had it for years in her little vanity, in the place where she would, comb her hair and put her makeup on. She had a cup there, and everything, all the jewelry I made for her was in that cup. So I used to make her very special things because I love silver soldering. It's infectious. So I just put the flux on, and now I have to position a 1 millimeter or a 1.3 millimeter piece of solder. It has to be exactly on the seam so it will melt and make a molecular connection between the two sides of this bezel ring which goes around the stone. And there's very little tolerance. It's got to be perfect. So it's very important the student learns how to bend metal to touch itself and make a really good connection. It's very professional. Can you imagine the discipline for these 14-year-olds? This really rocks them because it's hard. It's really hard to do. And that's where the student is building up his kinesthetic eye-brain, hand-brain relationship. He's ready to become a doctor or a nuclear engineer or a biomedical person. This can set a kid up for the rest of his life in trades, because some kids discover they love working small and disciplined. They love the discipline in it. It's not easy. No Joe Schmo walking in the hall can do this. And these kids have become very, very skillful with their hands, and they know how to fabricate and make something. So for me, it's wonderful. You just see the solder melt right there. You have to not keep going or you'll melt the ring. And then they put it into water, and that keeps it annealed. Is it the size of the stone? No, it's smaller. So you put it on a ring bar, has to be a tapered steel ring bar, and hit it with a steel hammer. And when you hit it, it expands, and you'll get back that 1.5 deficit that you cut short And then you also have to make sure on the plane, on the flat plane, that it's absolutely flat so that it'll touch the disc that I'm going to stamp out. Now the bottom was an easy solution. I just stamped out a disc that's very similar to the size of the stone, and that'll be the bottom that's going to be soldered on. But you look how nice this bezel fits. That's a perfect fit. And the bezel looks handsome. It makes the stone look handsome and very finished. So I have a punch that's approximately the size of the stone. It's a little bigger, which is just fine because it'll mate that ring beautifully, and then I can solder it all together. You see how many times I stamped out of that metal. I don't waste any metal when I work. I look through the hole and make sure that only what's exposed. There's a little pancake of flat metal. It's absolutely flat. And then I'm going to apply a film of flux, white flux. Now the flux, I ask the kids, what does that do? And what it does do, it takes away the oxygen. So when you put a flame on the whole thing, it doesn't turn black. It doesn't oxidize and get corroded looking. You can see the solder's been positioned, the little pieces of solder inside against the wall on the inside. And then the trick is not to heat it with the full force of the torch, just to heat it very slowly and dry it out first and get rid of the water. So this is a borax flux, and I'm heating it very gently, and you have to have a good temperament. Be patient, be very patient. And so you're going to see something happen. The side little piece of solder is going to disappear, but that's not just what's going to happen. It's going to get sucked in underneath the ring. You just saw that happen. And there it is. You see that little flash of shininess? That is the solder going underneath the ring. And now that's soldered together. And believe me, you could use a tractor and you couldn't get that two pieces of metal apart. That soldering is so strong, it's amazing. So there it is. I created 8 bezels for 8 stones that I'm giving the students so they can possibly get this whole thing finished by the end of the day. If they do, I have a beautiful, expensive gift box, and somebody at home is going to get a wonderful, one-of-a-kind, beautiful commercial-looking heart on a silver chain.